Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. Later in the show, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. This first news story, and the only news story of the day, is the official draft order after the Week 17 season. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it was a good day for Dolphins football. It was a good day for football in general. And we kind of got lucky here. Despite the Dolphins upsetting the Patriots in New England, which is awesome. Our draft order is pretty much the same after we beat the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are 1. They will pick first in the draft. The Redskins will pick second in the draft. The Detroit Lions leapfrogged everybody and will pick third in the draft. The Giants will pick fourth in the draft, and the Miami Dolphins will pick fifth in the draft. Now, how does this affect the Dolphins in any way? Now, we've talked about this, it seems like, literally every single week on the show. It doesn't affect them at all. They have so much draft capital, so much to work with, that even if, they needed to trade up, they could. Plus, they're in prime position to take Tua Tagovailoa, who is going to be, in my opinion, hopefully the injury history and some of that stuff won't plague him in the NFL. I think that's what I'm hoping. That's the only concern I have with his career in the NFL, but I think personally that he's going to be a great NFL quarterback. So the Dolphins can still take their quarterback at the 5th spot in the draft, and it shouldn't have much effect on anything else. So it doesn't hurt their future at all. It doesn't hurt anything, in my opinion. Now, if the Bengals don't take Joe Burrow, then the Dolphins have a great shot at Joe Burrow as well. If they want to take Chase Young and maybe stick with Andy Dalton, who the heck knows? The Bengals are the Bengals. Hopefully they go full on Cincinnati and take Chase Young, and then somehow the Dolphins get Joe Burrow, or they still get Tua Tagovailoa, who I still think is going to be a great NFL quarterback. So either way, the Dolphins win, in my opinion. So let's get into the box score, ladies and gentlemen, which, I can't even believe this happened, to be honest with you, but the Dolphins upset the New England Patriots in New England after 11 to 10 years of just pure, not even just losing, but getting just straight up cracked up there in New England. And somehow Brian Flores and the team pulled it out in a very special day for the Dolphins fan base. The Dolphins upset the Patriots in New England 27-24, taking their first round bye away, which is awesome. And obviously helping the Chiefs out a lot. But let's start with the, where do I want to start? We'll start with the defensive side of the football. We'll start there. Tom Brady finished 16 of 29 for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Sony Michel was their leading rusher on the day. He had 18 carries for 74 yards. He averaged 4 yards a carry, and he had 1 rushing touchdown. Receiving-wise, Philip Dorsett led the team. He had 1 reception for 50 yards, but the biggest stat in terms of defense is the Miami Dolphins held Julian Edelman to 3 receptions for 26 yards. This is without Xavier Howard. This is with Nick Needham and a bunch of practice squad players in the secondary. I don't think you could understate or overstate how good of a job the Dolphins did with this team. I really don't think people understand what Brian Flores was able to accomplish. I don't think we've ever really seen a roster this bad perform at this high of a level against a team that's fighting for a playoff position in the last game of the season at home, and it's a historically terrible place to play for road teams. The fact that they were able to do what they did defensively, holding Julian Edelman to 3 receptions for 26 yards, is very impressive, okay? That speaks to the game plan that they had and the execution and the practice, all of that, to what this coaching staff prepared this team, and the execution, all of it is just such... It's insane. We haven't had a coaching staff like this in a long time. Now, there were, if you listened to the show for a while, there were high expectations going into the season with this coaching staff. Or not high expectations, just to say, but we had expectations for this coaching staff and how talented they were, and they've lived up to that through this season. And it's pretty awesome. And again, holding Julian Edelman to that low of a stat line is pretty impressive. Their fullback / middle linebacker had more yards than he did. on the day, which is pretty crazy. And holding Sony Michel relatively in check the entire game was impressive as well. The defensive game plan all around was beautiful. I mean, we did what we needed to do to win the game with no pass rush, by the way, at all. We had 1 sack on the game, and that was it. And that was on it was a great play, but we did this with zero pass rush, and that's I mean, if you know that going into a game against Tom Brady, I mean, you could pretty much expect to lose at that point. If you can't get a rush with your front three or your front four, depending on how many people you want to rush there. Just an amazing game plan. Again, the most impressive thing is to get the players on the roster ready in this game. That's the most impressive thing about this. People make a lot about New England not having a great offense. That's not true. They're 9th in passing and they're top 15 in rushing. So this offense might not be clicking on all cylinders in terms of what we're used to with New England, but they're still very highly ranked in major categories. So it's not like this team, is just completely inept and can't move the football. They can move the football. And especially against a team like this, and a defense like this with so little talent on it, again, just an impressive performance. Probably the best coaching job we've seen in forever, really. I can't, and maybe, I dare anyone, maybe since 2008, since the Wildcat game, but I think this is more impressive than that game, even though we made the playoffs. Tom Brady wasn't playing in that game, Matt Castle was. So the fact that we did this with 12 and Bill Belichick on the sideline, with the little talent that they had to work with, I think is a more impressive performance. Going up to New England and consistently playing well through 4 quarters is very impressive. And defensively, again, just a really good game plan. Brian Flores is a very good head coach, and hopefully we have many more like this, many more like these games for years to come. All right, let's get into the offensive side of the football. Actually, before we do that, I forgot I have some players that I need to shout out. Some of the impressive performances on defense I thought were the most impressive one, and I think that people won't maybe realize it, or it's just underrated. Maybe it's a little bit more understated than some of the other performances. I thought Andrew Van Ginkel had a really good game from start to finish. His athleticism was used very well, and his versatility really showed up in this game, the way the Dolphins used him. He did probably the best job I've seen this season of anybody being able to set the edge. I literally saw him at one point push a guard, or it was a tackle, into the backfield, and I haven't seen that all year. And I felt like he was a very disruptive force. He was a very good open field tackler all game. And that was just really good to see him develop a little bit, because we really haven't seen that from the later round picks of that draft class for the most part. The best performer of that draft class up until a point was Preston Williams. So it was good to see Andrew Van Ginkel have a really good game and affect the game. He had a lot of really nice open field tackles. He did a really good job in coverage when he was asked to do that. He did a great job in the run game and run defense. He was a difference maker in run defense today. And I liked, again, just all around the way he played. So it was just really good, nice to see that. Let's go to the offensive side of the football. Fitzmagic finished 28 of 41 passing. He had 320 yards on the day. He had 1 touchdown, 0 turnovers, which is the biggest stat. He had 0 turnovers going to New England, which is very impressive. Patrick Laird finished as our leading rusher. He had 11 carries for 21 yards. The passing game is just, like I've said many times, has been the strength of this team. Sorry, I'm getting kind of tongue-tied here. Our leading receiver on the day was Devontae Parker once again, who has just had a complete resurgence of his career. He had 8 receptions for 137 yards, averaged 17 yards a catch. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he affected. He had the clutchest catch. I think it was the last drive of the game where it was a one-on-one situation with Stephon Gilmore, and he mossed him, and that got us into New England's territory. I cannot state enough how good Devontae Parker has been. He had 137 yards on the best best defensive player in football, because he's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year. A lot of people are going to vote for him to be Defensive Player of the Year. So not only is he the best corner in the game, but he's being recognized as the best defensive player in the game, at least this season. Which, I mean, to have 137 yards, and not only that, but have 8 catches, almost 10 catches, and these aren't dink and dunk routes. Okay, these are downfield receptions. He had 17 yards a catch. I mean, he's completely turned around his career. And he's one of the best receivers in the National Football League now. And, from where we were with Devontae Parker to where we are now, and again, the only thing that's changed is his coaching staff. And they have done a really good job of not only getting players ready on a week-to-week basis, having great game plans, calling great games, but also developing talent. And Devontae Parker is the best example of that. He is a monster. He's an absolute monster. And the biggest thing with him in the past has been consistency. He'll show up for 3 games, and then you won't see him for another 2 months. He's been consistently great all year. And, I mean, he's been really fun to watch. The connection between him and Ryan Fitzpatrick has been dominant. And I'm looking forward to that for many years to come. And again, the offensive game plan, what Chad O'Shea was able to do in this game was very creative. The play calling was awesome. I thought some of the things that we corrected in pass games, passing for it on 3rd and short situations more, which I liked a lot. The only thing I would have rather have seen us do is probably sneak it with the quarterback, but we can't, it's a sad thing about this offense, at least for the 2019 season, and I can't believe it's over. It seemed like it just started. But has been the fact that we haven't been able to consistently run the ball, and even on short yardage situations, we've been really, really bad. And that's been a problem for years now. The last 2 years, that's been an issue. So it was a really good job by the team, or the offensive and Chad O'Shea, to really recognize that and be more aggressive on those 3rd and short situations. And again, that goes to recognizing personnel, what you do right and wrong, and giving your team the best chance to win with your play calling. And Chad O'Shea did that. And he had. You want to talk about, especially for the last game of the year, throwing everything in the kitchen sink at New England. I mean, we had so many creative plays in this game. We probably ran more trick plays than I think. I mean, that has to be a record, dude. We ran a fake punt. We had a bunch of, reverses for, throws. I mean, there were, so many trick plays in this game, and they all worked for the most part. My favorite one was probably the throwback screen when we threw it to Albert Wilson and he threw it back to Patrick Laird. And Dante Hightower saved a touchdown. I mean, he really did save a touchdown on that, because I thought Patrick was going to walk into the end zone, but Dante Hightower just had a great play on that. But that was probably my favorite of the day. But again, just a great job calling the game by Chad. And Brian Flores for getting this team ready, and for, and assembling the coaching staff that he did. I mean, it's been amazing, and we still have Jim Caldwell coming back next year, and hopefully this roster improves drastically. And I cannot wait to see what they do with a better team and a more talented team. I'm very interested to see what they do with Ryan Fitzpatrick as well, because, I think he's. I mean, I don't know. I think you can't ignore what he's done this season. He's been very impressive. I don't know how the Dolphins are going to handle him, because clearly you can go to the playoffs with him. And, he had a 400-yard game in Sun Life Stadium the week before this, and then he follows that up with a 300-yard game against the best defense in football. So it's I don't know what you do with him. I really don't know what you do with him. I still think even if the Dolphins keep him and start him next year, which I think is what I think they should do, I still think they should take a quarterback. No, there's obviously no doubt in anybody's mind that they still should do that. So I think the best thing that they should do, and hopefully that they do, is to keep Ryan and then just draft a quarterback in the top 5. And it's hard not to say not try. I think depending on what direction this team's trying to go in, I think is what Ryan Fitzpatrick is the decision he's going to make, and whether he'll retire or not. But if we build a competitive roster, we have enough cap space to do that, and we have enough enough draft picks to do that. and we return, we bring back Ryan Fitzpatrick, this could be a very good team next season. It's just depending on what direction this team goes in. It's going to be very interesting to see. But if I was the Dolphins, I would keep Ryan Fitzpatrick, try to build out the trenches on this roster, draft a quarterback number 1 overall, and that's probably the game plan I would have. Because he's too good not to have on the team, in my opinion. I mean, he knows this offense very well. He's got great chemistry with the receivers. He's a great leader. The team loves him, and he's a really good quarterback. Not only is he a great thrower of the football, and I think the biggest thing about Ryan Fitzpatrick this season is he literally doesn't make any bad turnovers. Like, he's had like 2 bad picks all year, and I'll take that for a quarterback. It's like, you make 2 bad decisions all year, I'm fine with that. Other than that, he's been really good. He's been really good, and I felt like this was his best season I've ever seen him play, because he carried a team. He carried a team on his back, and we haven't had a quarterback do that since Dan Marino, is carry an offense, and he did that this season. Good for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Again, I hope we bring him back, and I hope we try to build out this roster around him. I think that would be the smart thing to do, at least for 1 season, and then hang over the keys to the future of the franchise, which is who we're going to take in this upcoming draft. So, and I think another underrated thing the Dolphins could do, and they might do it, is maybe they're not in love with anybody in this draft, which I hope they are, because Tua Tagovailoa or Joe Burrow are very good. But if they want to wait another year for Trevor Lawrence and, maybe try to accumulate even more draft picks, I'm not saying lose more games. I don't think that'll work. But I could see, I'm not saying the Dolphins won't have a successful season next season, because they could if they wanted to, depending on what they do and how aggressive they are in this offseason. But you could still win a ton of games next season and trade a ton of picks to get really high up in the draft, and maybe you take Trevor Lawrence, and then you hand over the keys to him. But I think the best decision that they could make is draft someone this year, let him learn under Fitzpatrick this year, and then hand over the keys to him whenever you really want to. I think that's the best thing the Dolphins should do. But I think that, again, the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick has played this well opens a lot of different doors for the Dolphins to take, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do. One thing I will say before we move on to the fan Q&A, Isaiah Ford is another player who is playing out of his mind. He has been a dominant slot receiver since he's gotten his opportunities. He's been a very good route runner, great hands. He's been great after the catch. He is developing into a star, and I'm very excited to see what his future with this team. And this receiving core, especially with Albert Wilson getting healthy at the end of the year, is looking very dangerous with Preston Williams coming back, and the development of Mike Gesicki, who again is another player who has developed himself into what we thought he could be. And again, that's a testament to the coaching staff and how not only are they good at game planning week to week and getting their players to execute, but they are developing players at a high level, and that is very impressive. And I'm very excited to see Isaiah Ford's future. I mean, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki. You get back in the backfield, you figure out this offensive line, that could be one of the best offenses in the National Football League. I think this Dolphins team ranks 15th, or maybe it's a little bit lower than that, in passing offense. And that's with this offensive line and no running game and none of that. So that's very impressive, and I'm very excited to see what happens after this. I'm very excited for this offseason, guys. I'm very excited. So stay tuned to this show, because we're going to be breaking down free agents, all of that stuff. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be an awesome offseason, dude. I cannot wait for next season. I'm very excited. So, yeah, I think we broke down everything that we needed to. Brian Flores should at least get some votes for Coach of the Year as well. He definitely should. I wish there was, I don't know, there should be a reward for an organization, but this team has a very bright future. The last 2 years, we haven't had that. We haven't had a bright future. The organization has been a mess. This is the brightest it's been. I remember making a video after the 2016, when we were recording an episode, after the 2016 season, when we went to the playoffs. We had J.J. Jarvis Landry. Devontae Parker, Ryan Tannehill had a good offensive line. That team looked like it was ready to take the next step as well. This team, I'm more confident in because of the people who are running the organization, and with all of the stuff that, getting rid of bad contracts, getting out from under bad contracts, and accumulating the draft picks, developing players, the young players on this team, and really just taking this team in the right direction. And they have an opportunity to make a very big step this upcoming season, and I'm very excited. So let's get into the fan Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. Got 34 questions to answer, which is awesome. Appreciate you guys. This first question comes from Mark Jefferson. Mark Jefferson asks, quarterback, do we wait? Do we draft Tua at 5 or take a chance with Love or Eason later? Or go Herbert at 5 or even use 2 first-rounders to get Joe Burrow? That's a great question. I'm fine with them taking Tua at 5. I don't think you have to be honest with you, I think they both have a shot at... I mean, obviously, the injury thing with Tua is a big deal, and I wouldn't be mad if the Dolphins used 2 first-round picks to get Joe Burrow. If they could do that, then I would probably say, go ahead and do that. I think Joe's a safer pick because of his injury history. If Tua didn't have a bad injury history, I'd be like, no, forget that. Just stay at 5 and take Tua. But that is a huge concern. That's a very big concern for me. So I think Joe is definitely the safer pick there. So if you have the opportunity, I would say use the 2 first-rounders to get Joe Burrow, to answer your question, Mark. The whole Jordan Love thing, I hope the Dolphins, if he's still there at 2, or not 2, but like 3 or 4, then I think they should take him. And just have him like a Kirk Cousins situation. Just, you might as well take as many shots as you can. This next question comes from JagPack18. He asks, who from the patchwork secondary would you like to see come back next season? And would you draft or sign some edge rushers? Yeah, that would be the number one priority this upcoming offseason is to fill out the defensive and offensive lines and get that situated, because that's the biggest issue on this team, especially the defensive line and the offensive line. And again, this is another immaculate thing that this coaching staff did, is improving the offensive line over the course of the season. And I mean, look at it from week 1 to week 17 when we beat the Patriots in New England. It's a completely different. It's like the best decision they made was firing Pat Flattery, or however say his last name, and hiring the Colts offensive line coach. I can never say his name right. You guys know what I'm talking about. Who is one of the best, if not the best. He's definitely top 3 offensive line coaches in the league. What he's been able to do with that room is amazing. But the Dolphins have to infuse talent in both of those positional groups, offensive and defensive line. In terms of players that I would like to come back from the secondary, I would say probably Nick Needham. I think he's a versatile, and Eric Rowe, obviously, but we already extended him. But yeah, Nick Needham, I would say. That's another player, Eric Rowe, who just started off terribly and was awful at corner, and they switched him to strong safety, and he's completely turned his career around. Like, the stuff the coaching staff has done this season is insane. But yeah, I would probably say Nick Needham if I had to bring one back. This next question comes from Ethan. Ethan asks, which quarterback are we drafting? I think Tua. too. I mean, I'm fine with Tua or Joe Burrow. I think, again, Joe's a safer pick because of the injury history, but they're both going to be good. This next question comes from Mark. Mark asks, what's up, Skaggs? I'm super happy for Coach Flo getting a dub against his former team at the end of the season. If you were the GM, what would your plans be for free agency in the first round of the draft? I would fill. Here's the thing we do in free agency. We get as many offensive linemen and defensive linemen we can. There's so many underrated. You don't have to have like a Jadeveon Clowney name. You don't have to have someone like that. There's a ton of defensive linemen out there that can do what this scheme asks you to do, which is set the edge, and that's all you have to do. It's just set the edge. and put teams in down and distances. The best thing this scheme does is get off the field on 3rd and long. Bill Belichick, since he's got to New England, that defense has been the best at that since he's gotten there. So you need someone, and you need a defensive line that's a physical, big defensive line, athletic, versatile, especially on the edges. That's what you need. So I think Van Ginkel looked like what we need on Sunday. Like, that is what we need, is a versatile defensive lineman who can set the edge in the run game, drop back in coverage, and rush the passer. But what the Dolphins need more than anything is someone who can just set the edge in the running game. Give them more versatility on 1st and 2nd down to put in someone like a Danny Shelton or I'm trying to think of someone like a Dante Hightower or Kyle Van Noy who can just come in and push the edges back in the running game. That's all they need. So my number one priority, not even offensive line, but my number one priority on defense, if I was the GM in free agency, is get as many defensive linemen as we can. And they don't have to be big names at all. They just have to be good at certain things. That way we have good depth, versatility, and a good rotation there. That would be my bet. That would be probably my Christmas wish list for the Dolphins to do, is just to do that. Just get as much talent as you can in that room and really improve it. And hopefully that's what they do. And in terms of the first round of the draft, I think getting a franchise quarterback is the most important thing. So whatever that takes. If the Bengals called and say, "Hey, you can have Joe Burrow for 2 first-round picks," I'd be like, "All right, then give me Joe Burrow." But if I have to, I'll sit at 5 and take Tua. That's completely fine. In terms of the other 2 picks, again, I think you got to go offensive or defensive line there. There's a lot of good talent there. There's a lot of things you could do if you're the Dolphins in terms of trading up for certain players. Iowa's got a couple of really good prospects on both sides of the football. There's a lot of things you could do there. And the Dolphins have their pick of the litter. Really, they can do anything they want in this draft. So I think you got to just get as much talent as you can on the offensive and defensive lines. And you talk about DBs and stuff like that. You really only need the one for this particular scheme, which is X. Now, depth doesn't hurt, and I think this team also needs a free safety desperately. So I would say in terms of the number one needs for this team would be I'll say defensive line first, offensive line second, free safety third. I think those are the 3 things they need, and I think a quarterback is a given. We know what they're going to do with that top 5 pick. But other than quarterback, you got to go defensive, offensive lines 1 and 2, and then a free safety at 3. I think the Dolphins desperately need another player like an Eric Rowe who can do a lot of different things for their secondary. So those would be the priorities for me if I was the GM. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, the way I see it in the draft, you go round 1, you go Tua Tagovailoa. Second pick, you go offensive tackle. Third pick, you go Dobbins, running back. Yeah, J.K. Dobbins is awesome. He's a really good player, and I like him a lot. Super versatile, can do whatever you ask him to do. Superstar caliber talent. Again, can do everything you want. He's very Christian McCaffrey, can do a bunch of different things, really well. Not just good, but great. And he would be, if we got J.K. Dobbins, I'd be through the roof. That's another priority the Dolphins need is running back. I would put running back over free safety. I would say I would go free safety, or I'd go running back 3 and free safety 4. This next question comes from Ethan. Ethan asks, "Hey Skaggs, I love your show." I appreciate that. What are your thoughts on foregoing a quarterback this year in the draft and taking Jeff Ogudua to pair with Howard and O-line or D-end with the other high picks? With as much man-to-man as we play, I would love to see, however you say his name, paired with Xavier Howard. I think I know who you're talking about. I could be wrong about that. Let me Google this really quick. But yeah, I don't think the Dolphins need to do that necessarily. Now, if he's the best player available, then I'm not going to be mad at it. But they need to invest as much as they can. Okay, yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about. They need to invest as much as they can into. I wish the LSU DB was coming out. I know he can't come out this year, but I wish he was, man. He's going to be a superstar. I can't remember his name, but He's probably got the best hands I've ever seen. I mean, for a DB. I mean, he's got sick hands for a defense. I mean, Xavier's up there with the best hands I've ever seen for a defensive back. He's right up there with it too. I can't remember his name, but yeah, I don't think you necessarily, depending on who's there in the draft. And I know I butchered his name, but between who's there in the draft is where you want to go. If he's the best player available, then you go ahead and you shoot your shot there. But I don't think. You don't need to go in you need to have very specific things you need to check off, and I think corner is very low on that list in my opinion. And I want to do more of a deep dive into some of the prospects coming out, and that'll be I think 2 weeks from now that'll be the show. Next week I want to focus on free agency and off-season moves and stuff of that nature. But definitely want to get into the draft at a deeper level. For sure. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, 11 years since we went up to Foxborough. I got a dub. Your thoughts? Yeah, dude, it's crazy. It's real. I mean, and again, this is the worst week of the season for me every year. I think it's the worst week for us all. It's like, we got to go up to New England this week. It's like, God, this Sunday's going to suck. Every single year it's been that way. For 11 years, okay? So the fact that we went up there, I expected to walk into a buzzsaw today, ladies and gentlemen. I was expecting not a good day. Let's just put it that way. And the Dolphins had an answer for everything that they did. Literally everything. And I'm talking about offense. Every time we were in a third down situation or any of those situations, we had an answer for everything the Patriots wanted to do on defense. And that blew me away. I was like, all right, we're about to get hit. Someone's about to come off free on the edge or up the middle, and we're about to get sacked. No, we had an answer for it. We got into the right play, and we executed it. And every single time. And that was the most impressive thing about it. And, yeah, it was awesome, dude. I'm so happy still. I've seen the highlight video 50,000 times so far. I can't stop watching it, and I was so happy at the end of the game, and throughout the game, I was so hyped when Mike Gesicki caught the game-winning touchdown. I mean, it was an awesome drive, and I'm just proud of the team. I could not be more happy to be a Dolphins fan right now. This question comes from Joshua. Joshua asks, or he says, if offered, how would you feel if the Raiders or Jaguars offered 2 first-round picks to move up to the 5 or 6 spot? I would hang the phone up because I already know what they're trying to do. I'm like, no, I know what's going on here, bro. No, I would take Tua still, or whoever's there. If Joe Burrow's there, you definitely don't trade down. And obviously Tua comes with some questions, but you got to take Tua, in my opinion, if he's there. And the great thing about this year is he can sit behind Fitzpatrick for a season, and we can still have a successful year. That's awesome, dude. Somehow the Dolphins figured out how to do both things this season, which is awesome. And they have all these draft picks, all this money to spend, and they have a quarterback that can bring you to the playoffs, and he is a franchise quarterback. And I'm saying this right now not for a long-term solution, but in terms of the very short term, Ryan Fitzpatrick is a franchise quarterback. So, somehow they figured all that out. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. But no, I would hang the phone up on John Gruden. This next question comes from Take Me Out. He says, thanks for a great show throughout the season. It was really great for us hardcore Dolphins fans to listen to. I would really love to hear a midweek live stream Q&A. Hopefully it's something you consider in the future. I appreciate that a lot. I'm glad that you guys feel that way, or at least you feel that way. It's been a blast, especially when the season, the lows have been really bad, but the highs have been amazing, and especially towards the end of the season, I'm very excited about this team and the direction it's going in. And actually right now I'm working on getting this podcast on iTunes and stuff like that. It's just really complicated to figure out how to get on some of those podcasting apps. But I think next week's episode will be on one of them, and I'll upload a video letting you guys know about it and what you guys have to do to subscribe and stuff like that. So look forward to that. And if you like the show, that's something to look forward to. This next question comes from Chad. Chad asks, 5-11, you got to be pumped about these coaches and the way they got this team playing. Do we have a better team than what we get credit for? To the point, maybe they fill some holes in free agency and the best player available. Thanks for the podcast. Fins up. Appreciate that. So, Chad, you're asking me, so 5-11, you got to be pumped up, of course, on the way the team's playing. Do we have a better team than we get credit for? To the point, maybe they fill some holes in free agency and then pick the best player available. No, the team is bad. Like, the talent on the team is not good. But this coaching staff is just like magic. I don't know how they do it, but they do it, and it's just a testament to them and how good they are. But they need to fill out a lot on this team so we can go get that AFC's title. And when I say a lot, I think that here's what I say what the Dolphins don't need to do. The receiver core is set and their tight ends are set. They don't need any of those. Their offensive line, I feel like, needs very little. It needs some changes, but I think it's not as bad as we once thought it was. So that's good because of coaching. So offensively, you're pretty much there. You just need to get the lines figured out. Defensively is the same thing. Your linebackers are solid as all can be. You have very talented linebackers. Sam McGuavin, Raekwon McMillan, and Jerome Baker are all really good players. And Sam McGuavin, I think, is underrated on how he's played this season. I know it's not been as good as we thought it was going to be coming off of preseason, but I think we've really carved out a role for him in this defense later in the year. And I think he can be very successful at that for future seasons. So you don't need to mess with the linebackers. You need to get edge defenders and some interior rotations for rotations purposes. But again, on defense, you're set at linebacker. You're set at corner for the most part. Safety, you're set at in terms. You need a free safety, but other than that, you have your strong safety in Eric Rowe, and some of the things that we've been able to do with him. So you're pretty much there are things that I feel like people act like, oh, the entire team needs to be changed. No, there are spots on this team that are like you don't need to touch. So those are the positions that you don't need to touch. But the lines desperately need help for sure. This next question comes from Alpha. Alpha asks, who's the number one free agent we must go after? I don't think you need. I know like Melvin Gordon. Like I don't think you need a running back that bad. You got Chris Harris, who's going to be a free agent. I don't think you. I'm trying to name some like the big guys. You don't really need any of those guys. That's the thing. I'll look up the list really quick here. Okay, so here's some of the top free agents. You got Le'Veon Bell, Ronald Darby, Ndamukong Suh, Teddy Bridgewater, Chris Harris, Bradley Roby, Jameis Winston, Phillip Rivers, Amari Cooper, Dak Prescott, Drew Brees, Darrell Williams. There's a name the Dolphins need to look into. There's a good name. Anthony Costanzo. There's another name the Dolphins need to look into. Cody Whitehair. If he can stay healthy, he's a really good player. Rodney Hudson. There's another good player the Dolphins need to look into. Jadeveon Clowney, they don't need. He's kind of a big name. And it's not something that they need. Robert Quinn doesn't fit the scheme. Brandon Sheriff, that would be amazing. So, here's your top 5 so far in this list. Brandon Sheriff, okay, is probably number 1. Darrell Williams, I would say, is 2. 3, I would say Rodney Hudson. 4, Anthony Costanzo, okay. Those are the 4 free agents out of that list that I would say the Dolphins need the most. Like, all 4 of those offensive linemen could be game changers for the Dolphins. So there's some names that the Dolphins need. As for some other names, you got Chris Jones, who fits the scheme perfectly. If the Dolphins got Chris Jones, that would be awesome. They don't necessarily need Chris Jones. I don't think they need to dump a bunch of money on Chris Jones, because I think they can pick and choose some later free agents that aren't bigger names and still get the job done. Like Shaquille Barrett. There's a name that I don't think he's going to get paid a ton of money. You got Dante Fowler, who really doesn't fit the scheme. Eric Armstead, who fits the scheme really nicely. But Dupree, a little bit a bigger of a name. Leonard Williams, who would be a perfect fit for the scheme. Again, these are all offensive and defensive linemen is what this team needs. You got Corey Littleton from LA. He's a good player, but again, linebacker don't need it. Jake Conklin, that's a great player the Dolphins need to look into. Again, all offensive linemen and defensive linemen. You got Devin McCourty if the Dolphins or the Patriots are willing to let him go. That could fill the free safety position. Stuff like that. I would say the top 5, in my opinion, are Brandon Sheriff, Anthony Costanzo. I would say Shaquille Barrett, Rodney Hudson, and Chris Jones would be my top 5. Just looking at that list. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. So those are some free agents, I think, alpha, to answer your question, that the Dolphins need to look into. This next question comes from Joshua. Joshua asks, would you be opposed to letting Fitzpatrick start next year and use our first-round pick to select Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields in the 2021 draft, using our picks this year to build up everything else? I wouldn't be mad at that if that's what they did. I think a lot of Dolphins fans would be upset at that. It's like, well, what the heck was the season for? But I wouldn't be totally upset with it. You would just have to accumulate a lot of picks in this draft for next year if you wanted to do that. You couldn't just use all your draft picks this season. You would have to make a lot of trades and trade down in this draft to do that. So that would be the downside of that. So if I was the Dolphins, because of that, I would just pick Tua or Joe Burrow. This next question comes from Louise. He says, "What's up, Skags? I'm really satisfying." Excuse me, I really can't read. He says, "It's really satisfying watching the Antonio Brown-less Patriots get somewhat dominated in a game which they need to win to gain a bye. It's a nice backhand to all the beat writers that reported tanking. A couple of questions. Thanks for the podcast. I look forward to it every week. I anticipate it will be a busy offseason with interesting draft scenarios. Will you be updating us on news and your thoughts?" Of course. And hopefully this podcasting thing works out in terms of being able to get that up there, so that way you guys can. I'm assuming it's easier to listen to, if you're not at home, I guess. This question, going on with this question. You had mentioned you like coach documentaries. I've seen the 2 Bills and the HBO doc with Bill and Nick Saban. What are some of the documentaries you recommend? Thanks, Lewis. In terms of documentaries for football, the best... Oh, man, that's a tough question. There's a lot of really good ones. The 2 Bills is really good. It's really good. They're all really, equally as good. All the or Football Lives, all of those. I would say the best one, if you haven't seen it, is the Do Your Job series, where they follow the Patriots for a year. It's a good one. And obviously, what's the stupid? And if you want to, the one to watch is the 2014 one. That has Brian Flores in it. He's heavily involved in that entire documentary. We do a lot of interviews with him. Patrick Graham's in it, who's our defensive coordinator. Chad O'Shea's in it. They're all in that documentary, and they all talk about what they did in terms of game planning and stuff like that in that documentary. So if that, I would recommend that one. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, whenever Fitzpatrick retires, if he wants to coach, I see Flores giving him a shot as the quarterback coach. Your thoughts? If that's what he wants to do, yeah. He's still got a lot of football ahead of him, though, man. He really does. If he's on a good team next season, and especially if he's here, he could be very, very successful. This next question comes from Chad. Chad asks, give me a player on offense and defense that could be an unlikely starter next year that came on late this year. Oh, and I told you DP was the real deal in training camp, but you never listened. I was just sick and tired of it, dude. We heard every offseason, we heard that. Literally every single one. That, he's having a dominant, training camp, and it just, and I was like, I don't believe it anymore. And this year, it's, I was wrong. But, okay, so offensively, Isaiah Ford, especially late in the season, has been a very good player. The game that when Devontae Parker got hurt against, was it the Jets or Giants? I think it was the Jets, right? He dominated the game. He had, almost 100 yards receiving, and it wasn't even... and that was when he became the number one target, after Devontae got hurt in that game. So, definitely Isaiah Ford. In terms of some other defensive players, I would say Van Ginkel. He had a very good last game, and hopefully he can carry that into next season. This next question comes from B-Fan something. He says, Yo, Skaggs, what are your thoughts... what do you think of the season, even though we are not in the playoffs, and what do you think of Brian Flores' development now? I think it's been a very successful season for what the season was set up to be. I don't think you could have had a more successful year for what the season was supposed to be. You got a high draft pick, which is what the coaching staff, not the coaching staff, was what the front office wanted. Your coaching staff developed and set a culture, a winning culture, and a successful one at that. They successfully did that. So the Dolphins did two things they needed to do this year. And they got out from under back all of that stuff. They got out from under all of that bad stuff. They hit the reset button and it worked. And in the best way it could possibly have worked. So they nailed it, dude. They actually nailed it. And they just need to continue to nail it. This next question comes from Alonzo. Alonzo asks, how would you feel if Miami didn't draft a quarterback in the first round? I think Fitzpatrick should come back next year, gradually bring Rosen, and add a later round quarterback. This allows us to fill gaps in the roster for the 2020 season. I see a lot of people thinking that, and I was thinking that too after this season. I think you have to take your future I think the best thing the Dolphins can do is take someone in the top 5 and let him learn under Fitzpatrick for a year. I think that's the best thing they can do. I think if you want to take one next year, again, you're going to have to trade back a lot. It's basically, you're not going to improve the roster as much as you could. So, take Joe Burrow or Tua, if they get lucky and somehow get Joe Burrow. And Tua is really good too. I think he's going to be a really, 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 really good quarterback. He would be number 1 if he didn't have a bad injury history, in my opinion. So, he would be the best quarterback on my board if I made a draft board, if he didn't have the injury history that he had. So yeah, I think that's what the Dolphins should do. Because, you're not... If you do that, you're going to be a good team next year, and you're not going to be able to get a quarterback. You're not going to be able to trade up because you don't have enough and all that stuff. So, unless you trade future first-round picks, I guess, if that might work. But I doubt it, because there's too many teams that are going to be in that top 5 that want, like, a Trevor Lawrence or someone like that who can be a difference maker. And Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence are not, like Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa are the same. I can make an argument that they're better. So, this next question comes from David. David says, need your thoughts on 2 players, Albert Wilson and Isaiah Ford. Personally, I love Ford. Nice hands, crisp routes, and he just has the enthusiasm I like. The talk about Fitzpatrick going to him and he forgets a play is awesome. Albert Wilson, on the other hand, I'm not sure. 2 bad drops today, inflated salary. I like the guy, but I'm not sold on him returning, especially this week. Yeah, he had some costly drops, but they were not great throws by Fitzpatrick, and he said that after his press conference. I think you can do, especially in this offense, I think you have to. You don't have to, but I think it would be good to keep Albert Wilson because of the versatility that he brings. Especially since he's getting healthier. He's getting some of that athleticism back. So I think it would be a good thing if they did that. And he doesn't have to be your primary slot receiver. He can do, again, you can throw a reverse to him. You can do a bunch of different things with him. This next question comes from Alonzo. Alonzo asks, did Brian Flores just outcoach Bill Belichick? Did Fitzmagic out Brady? I mean, technically, I don't know if they outcoached anybody, but it was just, they had their team prepared to win the game. Prepared enough to win the game, and that's what they did. This next question comes from Alonzo. Alonzo asks, what available free agents should the Dolphins bring to fill out their roster next year? We went through that earlier, and those are the names that I would pick out of the litter. This next question comes from Alpha. Alpha asks, okay, Skaggs, what was the biggest surprise of the season? And what is the biggest area of opportunity should we work on? Mine, Devontae Parker, was the great surprise this year and the biggest area to work on. Even our O-line, we need a pass rusher help. Thoughts? I would say the biggest surprise of the season was definitely Devontae Parker because he became a great player. Not just a good player, but a great player and a dominant one at that. So I would say the biggest surprise would be Devontae Parker. Let's see here. And the biggest area to work on, even over O-line, pass rush would be the biggest area. Defensive line would be the biggest area. This next question comes from Alpha. Alpha asks, He says, okay, I had a crazy idea. Don't think it's even been done before. Hear me out. This draft, we trade up to get Chase Young with our 2 late first-round picks and still get to a 5. Wouldn't that still be a win? And if that's not good enough, throw in a third or second. If we walked away with 2 of them, that is a dub and a half. Yeah, if you could somehow figure that out. Yeah, that would be great if the Dolphins figured out how to do that. This next question comes from Julian. Julian asks, wouldn't it be more beneficial to draft offensive lineman than a quarterback? I don't believe Tua has declared for the draft yet, but if he doesn't, we have him and Lawrence from Clemson as choices for the 2021 draft. Thanks for the podcast again. Not as it is awesome. Not to mention, it's always nice to win, especially against the Patriots. Yeah, it is amazing. So your question is, I appreciate about what you said about the podcast. He says, I don't believe Tua has declared. I don't know I think he has, but no, you need to take your shot. You have to take your shot with the quarterback, no matter what. This next question comes from Richard. Richard says, I heard a rumor from the New York Post that Jets wideout Robbie Anderson wants to play for the Miami Dolphins. I don't know, really, I didn't know that. His old coach is Ken Dontrell, or how you say his name. He would make this offense deadly. It's not something the Dolphins need, but I mean, he definitely would be a welcomed addition. This next question comes from Josh. Josh says, Skaggs, what did you learn about our team and coaching staff following this win in New England? And what does this W let us fans know we are headed in the right direction? Does this W let us fans know we are headed in the right direction with the franchise's future? 1,000%. Not only is this coaching staff great, but they have all of this stuff that they can work with to make the team better this offseason. And that just, you want to talk about hype. And I hope this team doesn't get like, you know, I do hope this team gets, because Brian Flores deserves it. Like this team, if we do this right, and depending on how aggressive this team is going to be with the free agency and the draft, and I'm not talking about, you know, getting Javen Clowney, but, you know, getting a Brandon Sheriff, getting an Anthony Costanzo, getting a Rodney, like those veteran offensive linemen, and some, you know, maybe a little bit more underrated defensive linemen. You don't have to like spend all your money on these big fish, like a Jake Conklin, stuff like that. If you do make the right moves in free agency, spend your money wisely, and do the right things in the draft, you can compete for a lot this upcoming season. So that's what makes me the most excited about, and I think fans should be super excited about. This next question comes from Tony. Tony asks, I think the Miami Dolphins, he says, I think Miami should take 3 offensive linemen in the first round of the 2020 draft. Keep them with our young offensive linemen, and we have a dominant line for the next 10 years. Fitz would be our 2020 starter. Free agent running backs are going to be available, and the rest of the picks could go to the defense. What do you think? I don't think offensive line as much as... I don't mind taking 2 offensive linemen in the draft, but you need defensive line help more than anything. The defensive line is not good enough to compete, and that needs to change. So offensive linemen, you also need those too, but defensive lineman to me is the weakest position. This next question comes from David. David says, I am a believer in Coach Flo and the staff. However, Ryan Fitzpatrick is balling. He has almost single-handedly won us several games. Are the coaches making him look good, or is it him that's making these coaches look good? This team with Josh Rosen may not have won a game. I disagree with that. I think it's both. And first of all, Ryan Fitzpatrick, to me, has played his best football he's ever played. But some of the play calls and some of the defensive game plans helped us win a lot of those games. And that's a testament to... And the development of the offensive players and putting them in the right positions to succeed. That all of that goes to the coaching staff, in my opinion. And obviously, Fitzpatrick helps with that, but I've seen him on other teams where that was not the case. And I think the biggest difference in those teams to this team is the coaching staff is outstanding. This next question comes from David. David asks, I tell you a concern of mine that no one is talking about. How are we so sure this coaching staff stays together, namely Chad O'Shea? What he has done with no O-line or running game is masterful. His work with our receivers and tight ends is glaringly obvious. Are you concerned with the team trying to poach him, dare I say, as a head coach candidate? Hopefully, no. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe some teams will want him as an OC, but he's already an OC, so no, I'm not really worried about that. He's done a good enough job to earn it, but I don't think. And if that is the case, the Dolphins need to stomp that out as fast as they can. Because for a rookie offensive coordinator to do what he did, and he's had a really good track record with developing talent, and that showed up this year. He's someone the Dolphins need to make a priority, and hopefully he doesn't get lost. That is it for this week, guys. I mean, what a game! How this game has changed a lot of our viewpoint. Like, the Dolphins could have went to New England easily and gotten 40 to nothing, and I think things would have felt a little bit different. But what a job Coach Flo has done, and this organization is heading in the right direction, and I could not be more excited for this offseason. Like, this is the most hyped offseason we've had ever. Like, I'm so hyped for this offseason. So, I am SkyX83. I hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast, and I can't wait to break down free agents and some of the offseason rumors and moves in next week's episode. And stay tuned for the whole podcasting thing. And let me know if you guys are interested in that down in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys in the next one.